We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Inoichi and this is part 8 of What If Naruto Sends Himself Back in Time to Fix His Mistakes. Naruto, at 26, has lived through 10 years of war. At the end, with nothing left to call home, he sends himself back to the beginning, to the day of his younger self's graduation, in an attempt to change it all. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 9, Part 1, An Evening of Confrontations. After about half the day passed, Team 9 finally called their training session to end. Haruki promised to be in touch with each of the genin to check on their progress until their next training day. After a very stern reminder to Lee to not strain himself until after a full day of rest or he could potentially end his shinobi career, to which the bold-cut ninja gulped and nodded tightly, Haruki left the group. He told Guy as he left that he would meet him at Kurenai's place before dinner that evening. It was a bit after noon and Haruki was already very tired from the seal he had placed on Lee, but there was work to be done. Haruki made his way to the Hokage Tower, hands stuffed in his pockets. The guards at the gate stiffened as he entered. Man, he would never get tired of that. He passed the Hokage's office on his way and the old man's secretary waved at him with a sweet smile. He nodded with a tired one in reply. He finally got to his own office and opened the door to find stacks of paper everywhere, files amassed on the desk and drawers of various cabinets left open. In the center of the paper chaos was an identical set of red hair and cerulean eyes that looked up at his latest guest. Upon making eye contact, the doppelganger disappeared in a puff of smoke. Now this would normally be very alarming, however Haruki was a special case. Absorbing the memories of the clone took but just a moment, and then Haruki strode into the room and using his non-burnt hand deposited the envelopes given to him by Hayashi earlier that morning on the only clear space remaining on the desk. He sat down in his chair with a frustrated huff. There was just so much to do. After a moment to collect himself and a deep breath, Haruki created 3 clones to clean and organize the office while he took care of his first piece of business. The clones quickly busied themselves organizing the papers and files by type and importance while also cleaning the room and giving it some semblance of organization. While they were doing this, Haruki looked at the 3 files his clone had been perusing laying in front of him. Part of the benefits of being the head of a department was the right to an assistant/secretary. There had been many applications and right in front of him were the remaining 3 that his clone had narrowed the decision down to. His clone had already been through 2 of them and while they were both valid candidates had decided to go with the last simple because of the name on the file. Haruki picked up the file marked Shiho and opened it. The recently promoted Chunin did not have overly much in the way of skills but her mental prowess was on the level of Shikamaru. He knew just how amazing was from his own time. She had been a huge asset especially after moving her out of the Cipher Division and into the General War Council. Plus he had the added benefit of knowing she had potential learning ceiling, which was obviously a requirement for the position. The most important reason for the decision though was that he trusted her and knew she wasn't a plant from Danzo. He would of course be incorporate training in her for duties so that she could protect the secrets in the office and herself from those like Danzo. After a while, he could make her a project manager so that his projects were not stalled by his absence from the village, just as he was finished signing off his approval of her application and completed the relevant paperwork. A knock came from the door. Haruki looked up to see the door open and Shikaku standing there smirking holding what looked like 2 to-go packages. If the smell was any indication, it was Ichiraku's. Not realizing he had left the door open, Haruki raised a silent eyebrow as he motioned the man in, his clones clearing off the desk while they continued working sorting the various stacks and files elsewhere. Shikaku walked in, set the food down on the desk, and pulled up a chair. Once settled he opened up one of the packages and began eating what appeared to be a large pork ramen. Tuchi-san and Ayam-san send their regards, the scar-faced Jonin says as he starts eating. Haruki nods as he signs the last line of the document before putting it in Shiho's file and placing it to the side. I'll have to pass on my thanks next time I'm by. What's the occasion? He says as he unwraps the other container to find that it is an extra-large beef ramen. They seemed concerned about you. Said you hadn't been by recently, though Naruto told them you had been very busy recently. Shikaku relied casually. You didn't answer my question. Haruki said with a roll of his eyes, making sure to only expose one hand to eat. Shikaku doesn't seem to notice and just continues with a shrug. I just wanted to eat lunch and wouldn't be back until about this time, which I know happens to be when you arrive from training with Guy and his team, as this is when we played shogi. That doesn't explain why you bought me lunch. Haruki counters with a raised eyebrow. Oh, I didn't pay anything for it. It was on the house when I mentioned it was for you. Shikaku clarifies with a smirk. I see. Haruki deadplanes as they fall into a comfortable silence. They continue eating together for a time before Shikaku decides he's had enough silence. So how are you? He begins, fixing the red head with inquiring look. All things considered. Just tired. Haruki replied without even looking up from his food. Shikaku seemed to have expected this and continued, completely ignoring Haruki's lack of desire to talk. Understandable. How's training? Good, you don't have to worry. I have more than enough tricks up my sleeve. I will be ready when the time comes. Haruki answered, still not looking up, though now there was a subdued smile on his lips. And how are you adjusting to the new position? Shikaku pressed as he gestured lazily around the room. I can see you have found a way to compensate for the increased workload. To have such mastery of shadow clones is uncommon. Haruki actually paused to think for a moment before replying. The work is intensive to say the least. I was actually just approving my new assistant when you came in. The sealing department's foundation is nearly complete. By the time I leave today, I plan to have the relevant proposals for the Hokage ready, as well as the applications at least sorted with most approved. I review the barrier core later this week. Excellent, mind if I take a look at who you've selected? Haruki just shrugged before sliding her file over to Shikaku. Any significance here? Shikaku asked as he picked up the file and read its contents. She's intelligent and will have a small talent for our work, but most importantly I trust her. Haruki replied as he took the file back from Shikaku. A brief silence fell as Haruki dispelled the clones that had been working, their tasks completed. Eager to keep the conversation going, Shikaku decided to let the subject flow on. Any information he gleaned was secondary to the goal today. So I take it between her and your use of shadow clones, your work will get done and you'll still have time for your training sessions with the next generation. Haruki just nodded. You seem to be training with each team that graduated from this past year in addition to Guy's team. This time Haruki looked up and pinned Shikaku with his cerulean eyes with a searching look. So let me ask you then, how are they looking? I know the challenges of my son's team and where their strengths lie, but what of the others? Who's ahead and who's behind? Shikaku knew he had struck the proverbial jackpot when Haruki's eyes brightened and his entire posture became engaged. Well, to be honest, none are really ahead or behind, each is just different. In terms of major weaknesses, well, they aren't very comparable, but each is crippling. For Team 7 it's balance, for Team 8 unity, Team 9 arrogance, Team 10 motivation. But having said that, each one is making progress to address these flaws and remove them. Team 9 has more experience than the others, but in overall strength they are not much farther ahead. Individually speaking, well, they are genin. Each of them has a great deal to improve and has natural talent. I plan on assisting where I can and, if they are willing to do the work, each of them can become S-ranked ninja. Shikaku just smiled at hearing the absolute certainty in Haruki's voice. That's a bold claim, but I don't doubt it. After all, they have you. Haruki frowned and made to speak, but Shikaku didn't give him the chance. Now I believe my son's team's session is tomorrow. Anything that I should be aware of? Any more training missions? This time Haruki actually chuckled and his posture relaxed even more. Haha, no. They are motivated now and I wouldn't do anything so soon to risk that. That's not to say I won't be reinforcing my expectations of them. Shikaku nodded and asked, what specifically can I be doing to help you prepare them? Haruki paused for a moment as if to think before replying. I am going to be teaching them each their affinities just like all the other teams. Because of this, it is critical, especially for Shikamaru, that they take chakra control to new heights. If you could expand Shikamaru's shadow jutsu repertoire, that is the biggest help at his current stage for what I have in mind. Shikaku nodded and tried to keep his surprise from showing. Nature transformation so early? What is his affinity? Lightning. I see. Well, I can definitely start him on the next set of jutsu. The least I can do is help him expand his manipulation of it. Shikaku replied while scratching his chin in thought. Great, because I plan to teach him how to change the chakra nature of his shadow. Haruki replied nonchalantly as he slurped up some more of the noodles. Shikaku on the other hand dropped his chopped sticks as his mind put two and two together. The penetrating and crippling power of lightning manipulation combined with the versatility of the shadow manipulation techniques. Nothing of the kind had been attempted before. Granted, the last time anyone in the Nara clan had a lightning affinity was before Shikaku was even born. But still, I am so glad you are on our side. Haruki just rolled his eyes and they ate in relative silence for a few more minutes before Shikaku tried to start conversation again. So then, how did it go with guys today? The redhead looked up and shrugged. Well, I would say it was intense but went pretty well. I focused on each of their weaknesses, though Guy may not have been expecting my methods. Haruki replied, suddenly looking very sheepish. Oh, and why is that? Shikaku responded in a tone of voice that made it very clear he was both interested and hesitantly wary of Haruki had done. Well, I may have trapped his favorite student in a double-layered genjutsu that I knew he could not escape. And I may or may not have showed him me slaughtering his teammates, him with each of them asking him why he wasn't strong enough to save them. Don't give me that look. I couldn't hold it for very long anyway, and we both know that in our world that his condition and mindset were going to get him and his teammates killed. Thinking otherwise is just arrogance, and in fact that's what we worked on. It needed be done, and Lee Kuin wasn't the only one. Haruki finished in a defensive mumble, looking away from Shikaku's very judgmental gaze. Well, I can certainly understand his surprise at your methods. Shikaku replied, sarcasm evident in his tone. So what else did you do? I took each one of the genin's strengths and showed them where it would fail them. For Tenten, I had her face a wind user, namely me, while trying to hit me at least once. For Niji, I limited his Byakugan range to 3 feet in front of him and hid underground while making him search for me. Finally, I had Lee spar with me, where I immediately put him under genjutsu. Suffice to say, I proved my point. Seeing Shikaku scowl at his pause and move to open his mouth, Haruki cut him off. And before you ask, I didn't leave them there though. I've accepted Tenten into the Fuinjutsu program immediately and started her on her fire manipulation. It won't be long until she can make explosive tags, and that should hold her over until she can seal her own fire techniques. She's a master of the scroll summon jutsu already anyway. Once she reaches that point, well, even I will think twice before blocking her with wind techniques. Haruki had an almost unnoticeable shudder, but Shikaku noticed. Before he could comment though, Haruki continued. Niji, I have started on training with his earth affinity, his speed and flexibility, and on sensory training to compensate for his lack of sight should that ever occur. I intend to teach him how to pair his Byakugan with his earth manipulation to form a seismic sense of sorts. Given enough time, I doubt little will surprise Niji ever again. Shikaku looked impressed but again was cut off before he comment. And finally, well, Lee Kuin was simple. I just gave him the use of his chakra. PHFFFFF. You did what? Shikaku had given up on talking and had gone to take sip of water when Haruki casually dropped that bombshell. It froze mid-air still in liquid form before flowing back into his cup. While that was an impressive display of water manipulation, he had more impressive things to grill the seal master on. Haruki rolled his eyes. I crafted a seal to serve as a filter of sorts for his chakra network that capitalizes on his taijutsu. It merges with his third chakra gate and acts as a processor for the chakra in his knotted network. It also collects the excess chakra given off during exercise and stores it for use until he activates the lotus and the third chakra gate opens. It has the added effect of giving him some resistance to genjutsu. Finishing his explanation, Haruki just looked at Shikaku with an innocent expression that seemed to itself undermine his accomplishment. Shikaku just shook his head with a grin before turning serious. Haruki, what can't you do with Fuinjutsu? I would imagine that such a seal has certain risks and side effects. It's what? A level 10 seal? You created a chakra network using Fuinjutsu. What are the casting requirements? Shikaku stopped his barrage of questions at seeing Haruki raise his hand with a bemused expression. One at a time, Shikaku. I won't deny that it's a high-level seal, level 8 actually, but I wouldn't use something on a genin if I had not mitigated as much risk as possible. The only side effect to speak of is a mild burn at the application site of the seal. As to the risks, well, without the proper elements in place the seal will fail to graft and depending on the stage would either retreat back to the scroll or jettison the entire chakra mass of the applicant into the surroundings. violently. Thankfully we were able to proceed since all the pieces were present. And what do you require? Shikaku pressed, his curiosity getting the better of him. If you must know, at least 2 Hyuga and medic ninja in addition to the seal caster. There happened to be 2 Hyuga present at training today and I was able to fulfill the medic role with a clone. Haruki said with a fair bit of annoyance in his voice. I see. I was unaware you were a medic nin. I'm not. Haruki cut in sharply. To say I am doesn't do the position justice and is an insult in my eyes. I was trained by Tsunade Bakon close to the end but there wasn't time for much of an education. I don't have the chakra control yet to do major things and because of my condition. I can't quite use myself as a practice dummy. Anyway, that's not as important as the Hyuga presence. Shikaku nodded, deciding to let the matter drop for now and ignoring the practice dummy comment before his eyes took an amused glint. Yes, I had wondered if he would show up. Haruki's head snapped up and eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Shikaku shrugged and tried not to smirk. He came by last night with 2 envelopes looking for you. You had already been by and left for the night and I happened to see him. We talked. And what did you discuss? He said that he had forms to deliver to you and I decided to inform him of a place where he could do that in person if he so desired. I see. Nothing really to be said other than that. A heads up would have been nice. He invited me to his home for dinner. Did you know that? Haruki sent an accusatory glare at him. Shikaku just responded with a smirk. And spoil the surprise? No, I did not know for certain though I suspected. It wasn't hard to come to that conclusion. Anything for a laugh, old man. Haruki said as he began clearing their dish from his desk. His was still half full. Shikaku frowned at this. Are you not going to eat that? Ha ha ha, so many questions today, Shikaku. I'm full anyways. Haruki says, trying to play it off as he continues to stack the bowls. Haruki, you need to eat all of it. You need the energy for training. You can't tell Shikamaru to eat more and not finish your own meal. Haruki attempted to make what looked to be some defensive sarcastic remark before his face suddenly went blank, his posture stiffened, and his mouth clicked shut. Shikaku then heard a voice from the doorway. Shikaku? Why are you, oh? Inoichi Yamanaka had walked in as Shikaku turned to look at him with an annoyed and pointed expression when he suddenly noticed the other occupant of the room he was in and quickly concluded he should not be there. By the look of the food containers, he could only assume that they had been having lunch in Haruki's office and he had just interrupted. He wondered offhandedly as he was still mad at him. How can I help you, Yamanaka-sama? Yes. Yes, he was. My apologies, Haruki. I did not realize this was your office. I was simply looking for Shikaku and I heard him coming from in here. The door is open and so I just... Inoichi stated out, apologizing, hoping to be pardoned his intrusion until he noticed something out of place. As Konoha's chief interrogator for years, Inoichi had become very proficient at reading the subtle signs in body language as well as keen peripheral senses to pick up unassuming details. What he was observing now, with Haruki's awkward position and the slight discolored skin on his barely exposed wrist, was not reassuring. Why are you eating with one hand? Inoichi asked, a sudden forcefulness in his voice. Why had he let this happen? It was beyond suspicious. Haruki had no doubt further injured himself preparing for the coming duel and was embarrassed by it. He was completely certain the Jonin hadn't gone to the hospital about it if it was true. It's ramen. I used chopsticks, it only requires one hand. Haruki replied with a confused tone of voice. Internally he was cursing at his slip. This was not a situation he wanted to deal with right now. Inoichi narrowed his eyes and stepped forward, pointing. You hurt yourself, didn't you? Your posture is a dead giveaway. What? Haruki tried in one last attempt to deflect the confrontation he knew was coming. Your hand, Haruki. The one in your pocket. Inoichi pressed unyielding as he pointed to the hidden limb that Haruki had stuffed further in his pocket. It's nothing. He tried to say, but Inoichi would let it go. Show me. Haruki sighed, began to comply slowly, and started his explanation. It's just a chakra burn, you don't need to. He didn't even get to finish speaking. When the hand became full exposed, there were 2 gasps as the remaining occupants of the room took in the pitiful excuse for a hunk of flesh he was calling a hand. Holy Kami! Inoichi yelled in horror. Haruki, how long has it been like this? You need to see a medical ninja immediately. That's a 3rd-degree chakra burn. Haruki just waved him off before turning to Shikaku, who had stated speaking. Shikaku, who for the most part had been silent through the whole exchange, preferring to see how the conversation played out, eyes narrowed dangerously and addressed the injured Jonin in a demanding yet calm tone of voice. "I thought you said there was no side effects." "Side effects?" Inoichi yelled, not happy at all about being ignored. Haruki once again ignored the mind reader and addressed the scar-faced Jonin in a calm and exasperated manner. "There are none. Normally, at least. Part of the procedure requires a medic ninja to act as a bridge for the chakra in the network of the patient around the application site, so that the chakra flow through the body is not cut off completely, and managing the chakra frequency fluctuations can be difficult. The intensity of the stream and the raw amount can cause mild burns. However, it is better to burn than stop flow, as this could lead to seal failure or death of the applicant." "It's nothing. Skin is falling off your hand." Inoichi yelled in desperation and confusion at the lack of response from the other two. In particular, why no one seemed concerned over the skin that just slid off the side of the pinky. Finally deciding to address the Yamanaka, Haruki replied in an annoyed tone. "I will be fine, Yamanaka-san. I don't need to go to the hospital. That's it. Shikaku pin his shadow. I'll take him there myself," Inoichi said, completely fed up with Haruki's lack of reason. Even as his former teammate called out to him, Inoichi had already begun weaving signs when all of a sudden the room was flooded with a presence of greater weight than he had ever experienced. The chakra intensity and killer intent directed at him was crippling. The room became cold and the air seemed almost charged with near-visible tension. Inoichi Shikaku tried to warn but was too late, as the wave hit everyone in the room and maybe even more than that. His breath hitches in his throat and rooted to his seat even as the source speaks in the next second. "Inoichi, stop." The tone is sharp and even with the weight of command, not cold but bold. Shikaku had heard it but one time before, and he was once again reminded of the power and rank the time traveler carried. It was no surprise to him to see Inoichi then drop his hands and straightens with wide eyes on his face with the slightest of twitches. Apparently satisfied with the response of the blonde-haired Jonin, the presence withdrew itself, though not completely. Haruki then stared directly into Inoichi's eyes and spoke. "The hospital's treatments cannot heal me before I would be able to heal myself due to the nature of the wound. Chakra burns are resistant to treatment by chakra, and few if any at the hospital have the skill to overcome this barrier, and those that do are better used for more critical tasks. I know the jutsu required to heal the damage, and I will be able to heal this myself in a few hours. Now if you will excuse me, I have an assistant to inform she's hired." "Shikaku." Haruki finished with a nod to the scar-faced Jonin and with hands stuffed in his pockets walked to the door. Before leaving, however, he turned around. "Oh, and one more thing. While I do appreciate your concern for me and admire your tenacity and dedication to your fellow shinobi, if you ever so much hint at trying to enter my mind without permission in my presence again, I will kill you." With each word of his last statement, he let his killing intent leak out and released his chakra in increasing degrees of magnitude until it was difficult to breathe. Having said his piece, the Jonin blinked and turned down the hallway that led to the exit. In that moment, everything reverted to normal as if it had never been there. Inoichi quickly walked to the door after coming back to himself and looked down the hallway after the redhead to see at least 3 Umbu teams and 5 Chunin aides also in the hallway. They had all clearly heard his final statement, or at the very least had felt his reaction, which more than likely triggered their response. No one stood in the way of the redhead though, as they parted to let him pass before he even reached him. At the end where the hallway joined, the main tower, stood a grim-faced Hokage and his Umbu guards. He did not move out of Haruki's way, nor did he raise a hand against him. Instead, when the redhead reached the group, Haruki locked eyes with the old Hokage and they seemed to have a silent conversation for a second before Haruki continued on his way. If the Hokage was bothered by the fact that Haruki didn't speak, he didn't show it. Once he was gone, the Hokage turned back down the hallway and pinned Inoichi with a look that spoke volumes, ranging from "I told you to drop it" to "see what you caused," and finally, "Do you have any idea the amount of paperwork this will cause me?" Having said his piece in so many words, or really looks, the Hokage made a gesture and all the Umbu vanished, cueing the Chunin to return to work before walking back towards his office. "Inoichi," Shikaku said from his seat still in the office, but was cut off by his friend. "Don't. Shikaku, just don't," Inoichi said with a tired sigh as he turned back into the room and faced the Jonin. "You saw the wound. That is an extreme injury. We were beginning to see bone. He could lose the hand if it's left untreated. It was probably a training injury. How reckless could he be? Doesn't he realize in less than a week he is fighting? Inoichi. Inoichi flinched slightly as Shikaku stopped his rant. Taking a moment to pause and listen, Inoichi's posture relaxed as he shifted on his feet, avoiding Shikaku's piercing look. Look. I am just as concerned as you are. Shikaku began while rubbing his forehead before looking up at his friend. I am sure Haruki understands the severity of his wound and has taken steps to begin the mending process. He happens to be able to perform medical ninjutsu, which is how he got the wound in the first place, as you heard. As for what he was doing, Haruki performed a procedure in Fuinjutsu to give the Genin Rock Lee the use of his chakra. Something that we all thought was impossible. Inoichi's eyes widened at hearing this. He, like most jonin, was aware of the boy's situation because of how boisterous Guy is, and like most had known just how crippled the boy was. For Haruki to be able to help him was just. Seeing Inoichi's understanding, Shikaku continued a bit more relaxed. In doing so, he may very well have saved the life of the genin and his teammates. I don't approve of the needless personal risk Haruki took to make that happen. However, what you did just now, Inoichi, was not the way to handle it and may have further undermined what we are trying to do for him. Inoichi's shoulders slumped as he considered his actions with this new information. I suppose I did react poorly. Do you think he'll hold it against me? At this, Shikaku actually smiled at his friend as he stood up and stretched. I have little doubt that his threat was quite real. However, if I have learned anything about Haruki, it's that he is the king of second chances. Just give him some time. Try apologizing and engage him casually like I have been trying to do. I suppose you're right, as usual. Inoichi replied as they began walking down the hall after Shikaku closed the office, the security seals on the office settling in automatically. Inoichi casually thought it was a good sign that the barrier hadn't shocked him or something when he had entered earlier. Deciding to change the subject, he wanted to know why Shikaku had been in the office in the first place. So why were you there exactly? I decided to bring him lunch and try to get him to just talk. Basic interaction. Not an interrogation, just casual communication. I am glad it proved to be rather successful before your arrival. Inoichi felt bad after hearing that. Trust Shikaku not to let his friend slip up go without a bit of nagging. Shaking off his self-disappointment, Inoichi indulged his curiosity. Did he happen to say anything about our kids training tomorrow? He certainly hoped his actions today didn't affect that. He did actually. He said the biggest help that we could be would be to take their chakra control to new heights, as he put it. Do you know what he has planned for them? No, not fully, but what I can say for certain is by the time Haruki is done with them, they will be legends. Whether that be a year from now or 10 years, he will cultivate a generation to far surpass us. The way Shikaku said it left little room for Inoichi to doubt it. And so they continued their journey to their respective destinations together in contemplative silence, already thinking of all the different training tips and forms they could give their kids. Inoichi forgetting the original reason he had been looking for Shikaku in the first place. Hours later, Haruki was walking down the steps at the Hokage Tower, leaving for the day. He had returned earlier with an ecstatic Shiho, who was bouncing with every step to his office, and began instructing her on her role, his expectations, and his first list of tasks. Haruki had acquired a desk for her to use and had his clones run errands to furnish her section of the department in front of his private office. Shiho had soaked everything in like a sponge and quickly acclimated to her new job. Haruki had left the task of organizing the upcoming Fuinjutsu examinations of the Konohagakure Shinobi Force. He was confident that between her and his own clones they would be ready in another day or so. He hadn't gone to see the old man again. He was still pissed at the bastard, but eventually he was sure he'd get over it. For now, his mind turned away from work to more pressing events and plans. It was at this moment, when he was at the gates to the tower complex, that a familiar presence fell into place beside him. A small smile appeared on his face as he lifted his head up in acknowledgement of the man beside him, though he doesn't turn his head. Acknowledging the Chunin on gate duty, they exited out into the tower complex and into the bustling village. Taking off so soon? Or just getting a late lunch? Came the curious and seemingly disinterested question from the side. Haruki just smiled softly and replied. No, Shikaku was kind enough to bring me lunch from Ichiraku's, but I could be asking you the same question. Ma. I'm not accusing you of anything. I was dropping off our mission scroll for the day. It is still several hours until training. The genin liked the change of pace, so I decided to humor them for a few days. Came the casual reply from the silver-haired Cyclops. I see. I hope you are not going to keep them waiting for very long. Before long, they will start using that time to set traps for you. And with Naruto learning Fuinjutsu. Well, never mind actually, be as late as you want. Just try not to die. What was the mission? Haha, very funny. It was a simple gardening mission. Sakura even used Earth Chakra to help till the soil and get rid of the weeds. She coming along quite well, though she tired very quickly. Her natural control gives her a more steady progression in training even if her limits are lower than the other two. We will work on that though. I'm glad everything is going well. So how was work? You look tired. Kakashi said while side-glancing at the redhead, noting the bags under his eyes. Do I? I'm not really, but no matter how long you've been doing it, paperwork just never gets easier. I suppose I'm technically still at work since I left Shadow Clones behind. I got through most of the applications today for the Sealing Corps and Barrier Corps, and also hired my new assistant. Now she's settled in and I must say a huge help. Other than that, nothing too big. Had lunch with Shikaku and for once it was just relaxed conversation. Sounds exhausting. Well, I was wondering if you would be willing to grab a bite to eat before I have to go and meet the team for training. I actually wanted to go over some things about a new lightning jutsu theory I had heard about and thought I'd run it by you. But if you're not hungry now, perhaps later with the team. Though the posture of the silver-haired jonin didn't change, the ever so slight hopeful tone was unmistakable. For Haruki it was a new side of his old jonin sensei he hadn't seen before. It both warmed him and terrified him. Kakashi didn't need to know that though. I wish I could, but I actually have dinner obligations. Interestingly enough, Kakashi's shoulders that had slumped ever so slightly at first tensed back up by the end, though Haruki had no idea why. This morning when I was training with Guy's team, I was formally invited to a banquet by Hayashi Hyuga himself. I already accepted the invitation along with Guy and Kurenai. Ho ho. Moving up in the world it seems. Kakashi teased, completely relaxed again. Mama. In all honesty, I never cared so much for formal stilted gatherings, least of all those that were politically charged. The Hyuga, more than most, are sticklers for tradition. With all their manners, customs, and formal attire. What's wrong? I just realized that since I've been back I haven't had the chance to go shopping. I don't have anything to wear or give as a gift to the host. Well, that's understandable. I'm sure the Hyuga will pardon any faults in decorum considering the situation. And if it means that much to you, I might have something you could wear. No. I will not be the only one out of place. I will also not insult Hayashi's trust and confidence in me with such blatant disrespect as to not show up properly clothed. I have more than enough money from my recent missions. We are going shopping, Haruki said emphatically while nodding his head sagely. Kakashi stepped in response. Shopping? Wait. I'm not so sure. Oh, come on, you've got nothing better to do and I could use a second opinion. Plus you've been here for longer than I have. I could use a guide. Haruki-sensei. Whatever reply to One-Eyed Shinobi was going to make halted as both turn and look down the street. Approaching them waving was Ino along with the rest of Team 10. Smiling, Haruki and Kakashi moved to greet them. Hey Haruki-sensei, said Choji with a grin followed by a simple hey from Shikamaru. Lazy slouch firmly in place. Hello everyone, Ino. Did you cut your hair? Haruki said, stunned to find her hair significantly shorter since he last saw her, and was genuinely surprised. Ino blushed slightly at the attention and fidgeted a little before grinning. Yes, I did a little. Do you like it? I thought it would be a good idea since it was getting in the way of my training and missions. Oh, and I've improved so much, Haruki-sensei, I can change surfaces no problem now. She finished beaming up at him. Haruki just chuckled lightly. I think it looks beautiful and I am glad to hear you did it for the right reasons. That's great about your training. Keep up the good work. The better chakra control you have, the better training will go for you guys. A small cough caught his attention, signaling he had yet to introduce his compatriot. Everyone, this is Kakashi Hatake, he is the sensei of Team 7. So you're the sensei to Sasuke-kun, Forehead Girl and Naruto Baka. Ino said, rounding on the silver-haired Jonin. Kakashi merely nodded, not even looking up from his book. Haruki just shook his head, the small frown at Ino's wording already gone. Little did he know that the bearded Jonin had picked up on it. Anyway, how are the rest of you doing? Haruki said, looking at Shikamaru and Choji. It's troublesome, but my speed is starting to increase. My dad has been helping me. Shikamaru commented with a shrug before looking over to Choji. Same here. My dad has started running with me in the mornings. I can feel myself getting stronger, Haruki-sensei, though it's been hard. Choji answered with a nod. That's good to hear. Haruki said. Haruki-sensei, you will be at training tomorrow, right? Ino asks, far more timid and uncertain than usual. Haruki, confused, looks up at Asuma, who quickly indicates that he is just as confused as Haruki. Looking back at Ino and realizing he had everyone's full attention, even Kakashi's, who was looking sidelong at him, decides to put the record straight. Absolutely, as long as Suma will allow it. Why do you ask? At the question, Ino looked down and away while fidgeting. Well, it's just something my dad said when we passed the shop earlier coming back from the delivery mission. He told me that you may not want to train us anymore, because he made you mad. Hearing this, Haruki just shook his head and laughed. This surprised everyone listening, as they were not quite sure how to take it. Inoichi-san and I had a disagreement earlier, yes, but I would never hold that against you. I have every intention of being at training tomorrow. Ino and the other genin looked relieved to hear him say that. Ino then smiled and, gaining her bubbly self again, remembered the other thing her dad had said. Thank you, Haruki-sensei, but I was also supposed to ask you something. Oh, and what is that? Haruki said, tilting his head to the side. Ino leaned in as if it were a secret, even though everyone was going to hear her anyway. Can I see your hand? This time Haruki wished she hadn't have said anything. He had, of course, started the healing process and with Kurama's help had healed most of the damage, but there was still a few layers of skin to go. Hoping to avoid any incident, he quickly showed her his hand, the uninjured one. It seemed this was for naught though, as Ino gave him a pointed look and said, and the other one. Despite feeling as though he was about to get lectured by 10-year-old genin, Haruki grumbled and showed her his less than perfect hand. Gasps went up from the genin while he could feel Kakashi's eyes boring into him with, we will discuss this injury later look. Asuma was frowning as he observed the wound while his students gushed at Haruki over it. It was obvious to him that the wound had been far more severe at some point if Inoichi had his daughter ask about it. From the looks of things, Haruki was suffering from a very severe chakra burn. What was impressive was the fact that it had healed as well and as quickly as it had. Asuma decided to keep his thoughts to himself though as Ino finished berating Haruki and tying bandages around the wound. Haruki had become severely uncomfortable under the gaze of the jonin as he pretended to pay attention to Ino's rant about safety and proper health care. Shikamaru, sensing Haruki's discomfort, changes the subject and asks for details about training tomorrow. So sensei, are we going to be doing another hell mission tomorrow, or are you going to train us in more than chakra control? Haruki, grateful for the change in subject, just smirks at them while putting his now bandaged hand in his pocket. Well, no, I hadn't planned on a mission, but if you really want one, I suppose. No. All three yell in unison, causing the adults to laugh. Haruki relents and gives them a hint. All I will say is that for tomorrow's training, chakra control and your family jutsu will be very crucial to your success. Shikamaru nods with a contemplative look in his eyes until Ino interrupts with a huff. Training is tomorrow, and while I understand its importance, we just finished today's. I'd rather not think about it now. What are you and Kakashi-sensei doing anyway? The rest of Team 10 rolls their eyes at her antics while Haruki just smiles and says, we actually were just about to go shopping. I have a dinner to attend tonight with several other jonin including Gai-san and Kurenai-san and have nothing to wear. Kakashi was going to help me look. Ino's eyes immediately light up like stars and looks ready to explode before she's suddenly frozen. Her posture slackens forcible and she looks over to find Shikamaru holding the rat seal in a kneeling position. Before she can say a word, Shikamaru cuts her off. Don't even try it, Ino. We have already taken up enough of sensei's time. Besides, you know we are having a group training session with our dads tonight and we are going to be late. You are not about to drag us shopping with them, and that is final, you troublesome woman. So stop struggling and come on. Later, sensei. Come on, Choji. And with a sputtering Ino, a grinning Choji and a stunned audience, Shikamaru shadowwalks an irate Ino Yamanaka down the street with Choji close behind after waving goodbye. Haruki seems to be the first to recover from the shock of Shikamaru's sudden backbone. Note to self, Shikamaru hates shopping more than Ino's wrath. Asuma, would you like to join us on our trip? I'm sure Kakashi could use the company. Haruki said, ignoring the indignant "hey" that came from his friend. Friend? Yes, he was ready to actually call the copy ninja that. Asuma just chuckled but nodded. Sure, with no missions today, I have nothing better to do. I've been meaning to do a little shopping myself. Excellent. I am sure you'll find just the thing for her. Haruki said with a face-splitting grin, and before Asuma even had a chance to deny anything, he turned and began walking down the street toward the market district. Quickly his two companions made to follow him, each wondering what they had gotten themselves into. And so the hours went by with the three shinobi weaving through the various market districts of the village. As it happens, Asuma and Kakashi were both loaded down with bags and boxes, none of which they had purchased, while Haruki kept adding more to the pile. At being asked why he was purchasing so much, he clarified that most of this was for gifts for the host from not only himself but Kurenai and Guy as well, since he was unsure if they would remember the custom or not. Kakashi had grumbled about not being able to read his book due to all of Haruki's shopping but had not tried to leave. Despite being a pack mule, he was glad to see some life stir up in Haruki. It was evident that Haruki was not used to having lots of money and being in a safe place to use it. Granted, not all of the packages were gifts. Some were everyday clothing, shinobi supplies, and basic amenities like food for Haruki's own home. Throughout the day, Asuma had been trying to subtle purchase what was no doubt a gift for Kurenai, though he was quick to deny it for whatever reason. The key word here was trying. Every time he would think he was getting something good, Haruki would shoot it down in flames worthy of Madara Uchiha. It was always something like, "It's too cheap, it's too expensive, you need to be responsible with your money. She wouldn't like that scent, that's her least favorite color, food? Are trying to say she doesn't eat enough? Diet pills. I'm going to pretend you didn't even touch those," and so on. How Haruki knew all of this was secondary to the fact that he had Asuma second-guessing so much that he could barely take a step without thinking if it was with the correct foot or not. It was in this growing sense of frustration at a high-end clothing store that served customers of the aristocracy and lords of the land that Haruki finally took pity on the man. Asuma had just put back a bright yellow dress that was priced high enough to cover 3 B-rank missions, when Haruki turned away from giving Kakashi his purchases to take to the front. Seeing the bearded jonin looking distressed and defeated, Haruki sighed. It was time to help the poor man. "Asuma," he said, getting the man's attention. "I'll tell you what. I'll get you something I know she will like in exchange for a small favor." Asuma looked confused but nodded immediately, since he was just about ready to throw in the towel. "Sure. But what do you need?" Haruki looked right, then left, before cupping his hands and leaning in close to Asuma as if telling a secret. "I need you to distract Kakashi for 10 minutes. While I take care of something across the street." Asuma blinked for a second before stroking his cheek with an unconvinced expression. "I don't know, Haruki. What you are asking is a tall order." Haruki rolled his eyes, went to the end to aisle, and pulled from the rack a deep black dress with red flower and vine patterns across the back, side, and lower sleeve of the dress. This particular dress was made of the finest silk that could be found in the land of fire, and yet came with quite a few perks. It was chakra treated and was resistant to damage even from energy. It could even channel chakra. The price was 2S rank missions though. Haruki carefully brought it from the rack and presented it to Asuma. It was already Kurenai's size too. Haruki, that's great and all, but didn't you tell me to be more responsible with my money?" Asuma said while sweat dropping. "Indeed, I did. So if you just will hold that for a minute, carefully, I'm going to go talk to the owner for a minute." Asuma gently took the garment from Haruki and watched the redhead saunter to the back of the store, where he began speaking with a finely dressed old man. After a few moments and seeing Haruki make a few hand gesture, the old man started talking very animatedly, and then Haruki would respond back. A few more times of going back and forth, and the two could be seen with big grins and shaking hands. Haruki walked back over to Asuma with that grin still on his face. "That dress is now 95% off." Asuma just stared at him. But, how? Don't worry about it. Just know that being a seal master has its advantages. Well, a deal's a deal. Great, you go pay for this and I'm going to slip out, just keep Kakashi busy. Just be back soon, alright? the bearded jonin said before turning and walking towards the front. Hey Kakashi, come help me sort through all these. Haruki says we need to sort them by price for later. And with that, Haruki slipped out and went across the street to Haragashi's weapon emporium. Entering the shop, Haruki found nothing had changed from his last visit. To his right was the counter where purchases were made with weapons of all kinds mounted on each wall, including behind the counter. There were 3 rows of racks that went almost the length of the store, each side of the racks covered with various weapons, armor, and shields. There were even bins and barrels at the corners of the store, and each end capped for smaller pieces and lesser quality weapons. The design was simple and straightforward, much like the residents that lived above the shop. The shop had 3 doors on the far wall. One led to a storage room, another to the living spaces above, and the last to the forge beneath the shop. It was the last door that was open, revealing a staircase that was only lit by what could be assumed to be the forge beneath. Looking to his right, he noticed that the counter was unattended and he could hear the hammering of metal against metal from the open door, and so decided to browse for the purchases he needed before alerting the owner. Haruki immediately acquired a standard average quality Choctaw and another katana, already planning on it being destroyed in his coming duel, and turned to call for whoever was operating the forge, only to jump in surprise when a person is standing not 7 feet from him. The person in front of him was a woman in her mid-40s. She had wiry gray hair that was bushy with tight curls. On her forehead rested a pair of goggles with tinted lenses that seemed battered and worn for years of use, and a green cloth was tied like band from the top of her head to under her hair. She had a faded light red top with shinobi-style cargos and leather full-body apron. However, the most memorable and striking features were 2 parallel diagonal scars from her left eye across her slightly wrinkled cheek that appeared to be etched in silver. Further inspection of her person was halted, however, when the woman spoke, causing him to flinch slightly again. "Easy there, fellow. Now can I help you with something, or are you going to stare at me all day?" Haruki blinked and realized he had been staring, body tense like a snake ready to strike since he saw her. Forcing himself to relax, and Haruki managed a small smile. "I apologize, I didn't hear you come up. I was just about to call for Tenshu when I saw you. I didn't realize there was anyone else that worked here. But yes, I would like to buy these." Haruki showed her the items he had selected, and she glanced at them before looking back up at him with the same serious expression. "Yes, that much was clear. Constant vigilance, son. It's a must in your line of work, don't forget it. You're going to get yourself killed." Not giving the redhead time to respond, the brash and yet unnamed woman took the items from him and headed toward the counter. It was only then that he saw from behind her apron what looked like a geared metal brace on each of her legs. The metal clinked and clanked with every step, and Haruki was becoming more embarrassed by the second that she got the drop on him. As she began ringing up his order, the redhead found that his curiosity could not be denied. As far as he could remember, whoever this person was did not work here when he had come in the past, and he was 100% certain that Tenshu had not hired anyone, ever. He didn't trust others with his work. "So who was this woman? So may I ask your name?" "I've been gone for a while, and to be honest, you were not who I was expecting when I came here today." She stopped and turned to him with a hard look, though there did not seem to be any real anger or ill intent by it. "It's polite to extend your name first, Baka. But if you must know. Tantakana Higurashi. I'm the smith here with my husband Shu. Mind telling me why you need these? Your sword looks fine." Haruki did his best not to face Vault and his own error. However, any embarrassment was quickly replaced by shock once he finally learned who this woman was. This is Tenten's mom. He was certain he had never met her, but now that he knew who she was, he could see the resemblance to the young Kunoichi. Tenten never talked about her mom, and he certainly had never asked Shu. The gruff old geezer wasn't a big people person from what he remembered. All he did was speak a minimum and grunted. A lot like Sasuke, actually, now that he thought about it. Deciding to reflect on this new development later and realizing he was making a terrible first impression with someone from Konoha he had actually never met before, the redhead tried to recover as best as he could. He's sorry about that. My name is Haruki Kazuma. And I. He stopped abruptly when he saw her posture stiffen and her eyes narrow. The change was so abrupt, and her already serious demeanor was intensified to such an extent that Haruki actually was intimidated. "You." She spat. "So you're the one that made an embarrassment out of Tenchan? That's a lot of nerve your arrogant ass has, throwing around techniques years ahead of a mere genin. You're not even her sensei, and you risked her life just showing off your way around her offense, which, given you're a Jonin-class shinobi in a one-on-one duel, is expected. You crushed her spirit, made her doubt herself and threw all of her years of training back in her face. Give me one reason why I shouldn't kick you out of my shop for the stunt you pulled. The entire time she spoke, she had progressively leaned more and more over the counter until she was an inch from his face, looking him directly in the eyes as she finished. Haruki for his part kept his face completely neutral from the moment she started. He did not flinch away or cower from the brash woman's tirade. He kept her eyes the whole time until she was done spitting in his face. Then he replied softly 5 simple words. And now she will live. A long moment passed in the quiet shop and Haruki was silently thankful that he was the only one in there. He held her gaze firmly but without any hostility. He may not begrudge her for her complaints, but he would not just bow to them. A war of wills seemed to be present for a moment, testing him and his resolve. He could see in her eyes, almost hidden but still there, a quiet curiosity that contrasted her brazen appearance. Then suddenly her features softened, or at least as much as could be expected from the hard women, and a smile grew on her face. Good answer, she said, relaxing and shifting herself back over the counter. Haruki couldn't seem to keep the confusion from crossing his face, causing Tantakana to bark out a laugh at his expense, though she didn't deny his questioning gaze. It's good to see there are still some sharp ones around. I suppose I do owe you somewhat of an explanation for that. You see, we shinobi are like weapons to our village to be flung at its enemies. And while it is important to sharpen our skills to keep our edge, the true test of any weapon is in the forging. The integrity of the steel must be strong to support the edge in the finishing blow, just as the will of a shinobi must be strong to support the skills we grow for when it truly counts. That is the lesson I have been trying to impart on my daughter before she learns it the hard way like I did. Pausing, she touched his face only to find deep interest and the spark of something she could not place. I was part of the Umbu at the time of the Third Great War and was particularly skilled at field traps in addition to weapons combat. My traps were never beaten and we held the line well against Iwa's advance in Kusa because of it. Initially at least. Eventually though, the rockheads got a few brain cells and came up with a plan that I in my overconfidence did not anticipate. I had become so confident in my defense I didn't consider other opportunities to attack me. They sent a shinobi that did not have to enter my traps to fight me. A member of the Kamizuru, the bitch. She didn't need to move through my traps to get to us, she just sent swarms of those infernal hornets after us from all directions. We were forced to scatter and my own traps were used against us because of my overconfidence. I went to face her in hopes of luring her into the traps I had set and got my ass handed to me. She was the worst opponent for me to face. I managed to get away but not before taking enough poison stings to the legs to slow me down. IWA ended up taking that strong hold and I lost more than my legs that day. I lost my team. 2 to my own traps. Tantakana stared at Haruki with a somber, intense expression, eyes searching for any signs of pity. She found none. Instead, as she looked deep into his ocean gaze, she saw profound understanding and kinship. She kept this to herself though as she sighed and progressed with her tale. It is a memory that haunts me to this day, with the nerve damage in my legs as a reminder, and it's not something I want my daughter to experience. Because of my arrogance and lack of will to strive through my fears and failure, my comrades paid the price, my shinobi career ended and I almost lost the ability to walk. I am truly thankful for your lesson to her even if it was still showy. I simply needed to test your mettle. To see what kind of shinobi you were and whether or not you deserved the admiration and respect my daughter gives you. Hell, I haven't seen her get this goo-goo-eyed since she learned who Tsunade-sama was. Anyway, I don't know who you are and I don't remember you in the slightest, but I've seen all I need to see. You're a good man, Haruki, and a damn fine shinobi from the stories I've been told. Let's see if we can keep it that way. Now why do you need these again? Haruki blinked for a few seconds before smiling and bowing slightly to the woman. Thank you, Tantakana-san. The woman just waved him off. Don't be getting soft on me. Now why is it you need these? She said, nodding towards the sword that was clearly visible on his back. That one is of better quality and in good condition. One is for myself to experiment with some jutsu and the other is for a student. He explained. Nodding in understanding, she began ringing up the items. That is understandable then. Is there anything else you need or will this be all? Actually, a set of chakra conducting trench knives would be great. I couldn't find any earlier and then I have a favor to ask. He said while rubbing the back of his head. Tantakana arched an eyebrow as she added the knives to the order. The knives are specialty items, very pricey, S-rank level pay, and they wouldn't be ready for 2 days. Are you sure? Seeing his nod, she totaled the final bill and as he exchanged the correct amount of money. After bundling his purchase, she put one arm on the counter and looked at him expectantly. Now what is this favor of yours? Taking a moment to make sure they were still alone, Haruki then activate quick silencing seal barrier inside the shop. Seeing the seals appear around the store, Tantakana looked slightly surprised and curious at what he could possibly be asking for. Haruki, after checking again for eavesdroppers, turned and pulled out a scroll and set it down on the counter. Can you repair the white fong? Immediately her face went from shock to confusion to sudden understanding. She remained silent for a minute while looking at the scroll. At length she finally looked at Haruki and sighed. I assume he isn't to know of this. Seeing him nod again, she sighed. I can do it, but this kind of work in secret is very expensive. Haruki gulped, already imagining the cost, emptying his accounts. All of them. Tantakana looked at him for another hard moment before glancing at the silencing seal and then back at Haruki. I'll tell you what. I'll do this for you because I know it's a bigger deal than just reforging a weapon. In exchange, think you could upgrade this old shack with some actually security? She said, smiling at him. Haruki just grinned at her before holding out his hand. Deal. She shook his hand and took the scroll while he sealed his purchases and order slip away. And after arranging details and goodbyes, the redhead left the shop to go find the 2 fools he had left behind before Asuma made Kakashi explode. He comforted himself by saying, at least it wasn't Guy. Kurama nodded sagely as Haruki shivered at the thought of the wrath Kakashi would unleash. Haruki quickly collected his 2 compatriots, saving Asuma from strangulation by a rather annoyed Kakashi, who had apparently been trying to sort the items in various ways for the past 15 minutes. After calming them down and settling their accounts, the 2 men helped carry the redhead's purchases back to the apartment in friendly silence. They were about 5 minutes away before Asuma breaks the silence. Haruki, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get your wind affinity so strong? Kakashi looked over, clearly interested in the answer the redhead would have. Haruki didn't look bothered by the question. Just tilted his head slightly as if in thought. After a brief moment of thought, Haruki decided to share a bit. I'm sure you know of the basic manipulation training where you half your chakra and grind it in on itself, forming a blade. Asuma nodded, already knowing this form of manipulation. Well, the next step that I found was to add different styles of rotation to the grinding effect. Asuma looked stunned at the idea, but it was Kakashi that replied first. What do you mean by rotation? He asked, a curious hesitancy in his voice that Haruki almost missed. Well, to get wind chakra in the first place you have to have rotate the correct yin and yang balance of chakra for the jutsu you are attempting into each other, triggering the nature change. That's just the grinding effect, basic rotation, which is great for the blade form of wind chakra, but for suction type or repelling jutsu, you would want to grind them away from each other. Or for forceful walls, you would want to rotate it like a current so that it rolls in on itself. But those are just some examples. The key to wind manipulation isn't so much the grinding of chakra as it is the idea of rotational force. It was at this moment that Haruki realized that he was the only one that was walking. Catching himself, he turned around to see both of them just staring at him. What? He said, looking at them. Haruki, you do realize there is no way that I can believe you were not a sensei, right? Kakashi said with absolute certainty. Oh, whatever, I didn't say anything that isn't already known. Haruki scoffed, attempting to play it off, but Asuma just shakes his head. No, Haruki, all wind manipulation guides and scrolls that I've ever read focus on the grinding aspect. There are very few other wind users in Konoha. Haruki just rubbed the back of his head sheepishly, not quite sure what to say and feeling a little uncomfortable. Asuma just shakes his head before asking, regardless, do you think you could give me some pointers? Haruki blinks for a moment, but before he can speak, Kakashi butts in. Sign me up too. Wind jutsu are the hardest for me, I could use some practice. Haruki began sputtering, but before he could say no, Kakashi and Asuma were already walking past him and further discussing the details of possible training together. Haruki sighed and decided that it was something that could be dealt with later. As they approached the apartment door, they discovered that it was cracked slightly. About that time there was a small rumbling and flash from inside the apartment. Haruki merely chuckled as the other 2 looked confused. Pushing the door open, they found a smirking redhead doppelganger and a short soot-faced Naruto who was rubbing his eyes and blink rapidly. Sealing supplies, training scrolls and other equipment were all over the coffee table and living room. And that's why you double-check your trigger matrix before you activate that chakra relay. The doppelganger said with a chuckle before disappearing in a puff of smoke. I know. I know. How long are these spots going to be in my eyes? Came the annoyed reply of the black-faced blonde-haired boy as he blinked rapidly and rubbed his eyes. Then from the door, the real Haruki replied, they should pass in a minute or so. Causing the boy to jump in surprise. Naruto took a moment to blink a bit more and then scrunched his face. Kakashi-sensei. What are you doing here? For a brief moment his eyes widened in horror. Am I that late for training? At this Asuma openly laughed while they stepped into the apartment and set the things down. Kakashi just sighed. No Naruto, you are not late and I was helping Haruki with some shopping. He finished setting down all the bags and packages he had been carrying on the table and floor. Naruto relaxed at that for a moment before confusion formed on his face and he looked at Haruki who was carrying things into the kitchen to be put away. But why didn't Haruki-sensei just make clones to carry everything? The words had barely left his mouth when Kakashi and Asuma in unison face-palmed and muttered, stupid. 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 In the kitchen Haruki just laughed and answered, there's no need to waste chakra with such good help around. Right guys? He shot a coy smile at his compatriots. The two jonin just glowered at him but did not protest. Anyway, I believe some introductions are in order. Naruto, this is Asuma Sarutobi. He is the team leader and sensei of Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino. Asuma, this is Naruto-kun, my neighbor. He's also a wind user like you. Whatever Asuma was going to say caught in his throat at this revelation and his eyes went from Haruki to Naruto and back. Suspicion and intrigue clear in his eyes though a bit hidden. Thankfully, his lapse in greeting was covered quite well by Naruto's immediate enthusiasm. Wow, you're a wind user too. That's so cool. Are you super strong like Haruki-sensei? Do you know any cool jutsu? I am working on the leaf exercise right now with Kakashi-sensei, but it's really hard. I can only split the leaf halfway. Do you have another affinity? Mine is water. I already learned a few jutsu so I can stop Sasuke now in our spars. Do you have any tips? Asuma though was only half listening, wind and water affinity. Just like Haruki. What are the chances of that? Wait, did he just say he split a leaf halfway? How did he get so strong so quickly? Asuma risks a glance at Haruki who is watching amused as Kakashi admonishes Naruto for bombarding the bearded jonin with so many questions. Of course Haruki could have taught him, but he still shouldn't be progressing this quickly, should he? Deciding to consider these thoughts later, Asuma takes a moment to really take in the room and the genin's training materials in hopes of understanding his progress better. It's in that moment that he notices something interesting leaning in the corner. Deciding to save the blonde from Kakashi's lecture and hoping to get some information, it's nice to meet you Naruto. Yes, I do have another affinity, but it's fire not water. I am very impressed though that you are so far into your training. Though I'm curious, is Haruki or Kakashi training you in bojutsu as well? Asuma gestures to the corner where a wooden bow staff leans. No, Haruki-sensei gave it to me with a kata scroll but told me that I would have to wait to find out who my sensei would be. The blonde genin replied with curious eyes up at Asuma, do you know who my sensei is? Asuma looked at Haruki as he answered. No, but I have a few guesses, but whoever they are I'm sure that if Haruki recommends them then they are of good quality. In truth, Asuma knew exactly who the secret sensei was. He had used that same training staff when he was Naruto's age. All Sarutobi did. A cough caught everyone's attention then as Haruki looked to Naruto. Honestly, I was hoping Asuma would agree to help with your element manipulation training since my new duties and missions may prevent me from being around enough to give you all the attention needed for mastery. That is if Asuma-sensei is willing. Glancing at the bearded jonin, Asuma just nodded ever so slightly before smiling and looking at Naruto. Sounds fun. Haruki seems to have done most of the work for me anyway, ha. I may not be as powerful as him with wind jutsu, but I have a few tricks that may help. Assuming Kakashi doesn't mind? Kakashi just waves him of, ma, I can use wind jutsu, not so much teach them. Besides those three are a handful, I think I could use all the help I could get. This of course incited a reaction from the blonde who insisted that they were no more trouble than any other group. And as the bickering continued, Haruki, who had finished sorting the packages, disappeared into the back bedroom to get ready for the party. After the ridiculous argument subsided with Kakashi's eyes smiling about his troublesome students much to the blonde's frustration, Naruto makes an unexpected turn in the conversation. So Asuma-sensei, since you are a wind and fire user, do you have a lot of combination jutsu? Surprised by the question, Asuma takes a moment to consider the two innocent eyes that were looking up at him. I do in fact have some jutsu that I can combine for stronger results, though it's not a tactic I prefer. It's important to understand that combination jutsu take a careful chakra balance that requires precise control, especially with another person. This usually results in the jutsu becoming taxing and chakra intensive, which is not ideal in a fight unless you are finishing. Comboing with oneself isn't common because it requires clones usually to be effective. I am sure Kakashi or Haruki have explained to you that you are an exception to the general rule when it comes to clones. Suffice to say, while I can do them, it's not my go-to tactic. The bearded Jonin finished with a smile on his face as he observed the hyper Genin's reaction. The boy would really have to get better at not making his thoughts so obvious on his face. Throughout his explanation, the blonde had been intensely focused on his explanation, seemingly soaking it up like a sponge. With that level of dedication, it's not as surprising he's improved so much either. He had watched the boy's face deflate slightly as Asuma continued to point out the flaws and challenges of combination jutsu. Then at the end, it was as if a switch was flipped and he was staring at a ninja who was confident enough to move mountains and anything else in his way. If only my students had that level of resolve, he thought with an internal sigh, though Haruki has help with that. Actually, the Jonin thought, staring straight into Naruto's eyes, I know where I've seen that look before. His thought process was interrupted however when the blonde spoke up, I can handle it, Asuma-sensei, will you please help me? The blonde looked down bit, continuing without losing any resolve in his voice. I know it's difficult and I have a lot to learn and accomplish before I'm ready to do the cool and awesome things, but, he paused and looked at Asuma with a sharp intensity, the sooner I can get the basics down the sooner I can help Sasuke and Sakura. Asuma stared at Naruto in the eyes for a moment before chuckling. I'd be happy to help Naruto when you're ready. After all, you just found out your affinities yesterday. Combination jutsu aren't in the near future for you just yet. However, I honestly will have to defer to Kakashi on this. I am sure he would be okay with it. Naruto burst out before a raised hand stopped him. That's not what I meant. I am not deferring to him because I think he wouldn't want me helping you. I am deferring because I can count on my hand how many people can combine jutsu as well as Kakashi can. Ninjutsu is a specialty of his. The orange-clad genin turned to his sensei, who was smiling at him, and looked at him with pleading eyes. Not to worry, my cute little genin. Once you are all competent enough in the jutsu Haruki gave you and strategic thinking, I'll start helping you combine your jutsu. In fact, today I am have you and Sasuke begin synchronization training. Yada! Thank you, Kaka-sensei. Naruto hollered and Asuma chuckled at the nickname while Kakashi deadplaned. Don't mention it. It's not like I'm your sensei or something. I don't know, Kakashi, given your tardiness and willingness to shrug your students, I was beginning to wonder. The trio turned to the voice from the bedroom door to see Haruki dressed in a very fine light blue kimono with dark blue accents. It had orange moons and stars adorning it in intricate designs, and when he moved it was as if they began dancing. His physique filled it out well and the orange sash seemed almost fitting. Well, don't keep staring. It's not that ridiculous. The redhead said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. This of course caused a tug at the back of Kakashi and Asuma's minds, but they couldn't quite place it. Kakashi was the first to recover. Mama. This just the first time we've seen you so official. You look good. Yeah, Haruki-sensei, your robe is so cool. This made Haruki laugh. It's not a robe, Naruto. It's a traditional kimono, but thanks. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly in embarrassment, and in that moment, Asuma notices. He does nothing externally but resolves to get some answers from the redhead as soon as they were alone. Speaking of which, well, Haruki, it's about time to go to Kurenai's. I got the packages from the others when you're ready. Almost as if sensing Asuma's need to remove them, Kakashi follows up saying he and Naruto had better go get ready for training. Naruto, stunned by his sensei wanting to get there early, celebrates and follows him out the door after packing up his training equipment. At the door, when Haruki and Asuma go to leave after the security seals fall into place, Haruki turns to Asuma and says, 100 Ryo, says Kakashi ditches him as soon as they round the corner. Asuma snorts and replies, I'm not stupid enough to take that bet. They reach the bottom of the stairs in time to hear a certain blonde shout and groan in frustration. The two just look at each other and chuckle. That's it for part 8. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.